Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're here with some very interesting theories that that recently came to our attention regarding the book of Revelation.
Yes, and we have our ongoing series about books that are almost in the Bible. Mm-hmm. So I decided for this one, it would be a book that is almost not in the Bible.
Oh, I like it.
Supposedly.
Yes. I was watching a Protestant speaker, and he was talking about tradition and trying to essentially
tradition.
Well, he wasn't discussing Judaism, so there was no mentions of Fiddler on the Roof that I recall. But essentially, quite often Protestants and Catholics talk across each other because we use the same words and we mean different things.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he was trying to do one where it's kind of agreed on. There's a certain amount of tradition that everyone has, even if you say you are a five solo church with Bible alone. There's some things, and in the comments there was
good man,
very lively discussion, largely including things like the fact that we all agree, except for the most fringe of fringe people, that the Bible did not drop down fully formed in people's hands, and that's how we got it.
Yes.
There was lots of discussion about how technically the first Christians would have had all of the Jewish scripture, and then there was arguments about which Jewish scripture, because there was the ones that ranged from the first 5 books to everything we use. But
see our episodes on Jubilees and whatnot.
Yes, but one person commented that it was a fact that essentially
a fact
that the Gospels, most of the letters in Revelation, were all in circulation and widely accepted in all the churches by the end of the 1st century. At which point I'm like, all right, I have to double check when, am I not understanding what 1st century means?
Oh, there's a question.
So I double checked 1st century, 1 to 100 AD-ish. And then I'm like, do I not recall when Revelation was made? No. So I looked that up. The absolute earliest date is 41 for it. And almost no one thinks it's 41.
I have never heard that before. That's astonishing.
Yeah, that's just like the absolute latest date is 117. So if it happened
Seems
then,
late,
it would be after the 1st century already. But most people either say it's either during the reign of Nero, which was 54 to 68, or during the name of, can you pronounce that? Domitian, which was 81 to 96, with the vast majority of Bible scholars going for a 95 to 96 across multiple denominations, but the second one being about 65 to 68.
Yeah. Yes, that's the ones I've usually heard of. Is definitely past definitely into the 80s, but before the hundreds.
Yes. So I am
in
just
part
amazed.
Because we've got established churches to which you can write letters. It seems like John's been persecuted, and he's kind of an older dude.
And John Revelation tends to come off as a at least to me, as the sort of visions that you would be granted when you're not dying now, but you might be soon, and
So for starters, we got if you follow most scholars, somehow it was widely circulated and everyone agreed upon it within a couple of years.
Well, so it's like an instant bestseller.
Yeah.
Okay.
When in truth, this was the most contested and last included book of the New Testament. When we do the not in the Bible, we include things like, who wrote it, when, is it used in liturgical use? Okay, so part of the issue is we know a John wrote it. There are 3 Johns contending with a couple main Johns.
And then, of course, there's also the phenomenon of people writing in other people's names. Wisdom of Solomon, which we know was composed in the 2nd century BC, hundreds of years after the death of Solomon.
Yes. So most people agree it was one of the Johns and not someone following John.
Yeah.
And all these Johns are biblical level Johns, whether it was the apostle or one of the other ones.
It's all the apostle, but that's just a personal belief.
2, it has the fact that it's kind of, it's the only book of its type in the New Testament, and it's kind of odd in that as it's a letter. He's writing to these different churches. He's also having visions and discussing the end times.
And especially when you read chapters 1 and 2, if that does not punch you in the gut, you are not reading closely enough.
Well, there are letters. It's not just a letter, right? It's like a letter that he wrote about letters that he wrote.
That's a good description. I like that. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's kind
a
of
letter about letters.
part of it is where do we put this as what type of book it is?
Because I mean, it's in many ways it's clearly a letter to some degree, but also has a lot of similarities to Daniel and Ezekiel. You've got wild, just completely wild imagery.
I say we put it right smack dab in the middle of Paul.
just halfway through one of his long letters.
Between First and Second Thessalonians. First Thessalonians, Revelation, Second Thessalonians. I love it. Here we go.
Wait, which one did he mention where someone will get taken as a negative, so we can throw it in there just to really help the end times funnies? But anyway.
Oh, side note: the rapture, as popularly meant, is not real.
No.
But anyway, so it was something that it wasn't instantly included because there's a lot of things in it that when we're discussing books that didn't come into the Bible get there. For example, I learned that some Eastern Christian churches still don't consider the Bible. Not like different Orthodox branches, but like the groups largely that we would call Nestorians, even though
the Church of the East.
Yes, even though they don't actually follow Nestorius, and we've ironed out the fact that they just use a lot of different words to explain basically our same idea of the concept of the Trinity in Jesus.
Yeah, back to that discussion of sometimes people talk past each other. Yeah. Yeah, so the Oriental Orthodox churches.
Yes.
Some of the non-Chalcedonian churches, which are totally signed up to Chalcedon. They just rejected Chalcedon back in the day.
Yes.
It's all wild.
It just took them a little while to decide to sign off on
Tempers
the paperwork.
flared, people... Yeah.
Also, almost all, except for there's like a couple of different Eastern Orthodox churches that it's never read in the liturgy of like the vast majority of Eastern Orthodox churches. It's not in the liturgy of a large quantity of Eastern Rite Catholics.
Yeah.
Like one of the sources was someone who's like, my priest as a Byzantine Catholic started talking about all the books of the Bible and he got to Revelation and he had to go through essentially why we're reading this because this is not something we do liturgically ever.
So yeah, he had to almost defend it to his own congregants.
Yes, like they all acknowledge, yes, we consider this canon, but we don't use it.
Yeah.
So under the the criteria of it was used for liturgical purposes, it wasn't.
Well, it's like some of the lesser prophetic books, which are almost never used in the liturgy.
Yeah.
Like, and now Nahum, you're not going to be familiar with this because we don't read a lot about the condemnation of Edom in the liturgy.
Yes.
Although,
But they had it coming.
They totally had it coming.
Also, it's something that beyond not being widely circulated in the first century,
Especially couldn't have been widely circulated before it was written.
Yes, it is apparently the least popular as far as we have really ancient copies of this book of all the New Testament books. Like I didn't look it up, but part of me thinks there's probably more ancient ones of like other pious readings.
Yeah, other books not in the Bible, more copies exist than Revelation,
or at least sections of it. Because if you're doing a baptism, you need to know from the Didache how you do it. So you don't need to know how many eyes the dragon from the sea had.
In fairness, though, I would use all of those facts to prop up my also believing in it being that John, because if it was a John. That's still a good enough way to get it to help it carry it through. But if it was like the John, the fact that it fell short on a number of other items that they would have, other criteria they would have looked for, might not be as significant.
Yes, given that from outside of biblical sources, it's generally tradition that John the Apostle was the only one who died of old age, and the storyline in Revelation of where he was fits with that.
Is it the Mormons or the JWs who think that he's still around today?
It's the Mormons.
Okay.
He's one of their elders, but he's never in the elder count. So he's like
he's the secret elder.
Asterisk elder.
He's like the tribe of Levi, not counted in the count of the 12 tribes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Love you guys.
But anyway, also,
like we're supposed to, not really love you. Yeah, I mean, we don't adore you. We just love you.
Love you in the sense that I wish what is best for you, which is to become Catholic post haste,
or at least actual Christian, and not believing in a space Jesus.
Hey, as long as you're going to do it, you might as well go all the way.
Yes, but still.
So, I mean,
but anyway,
there's this weird idea that the early church didn't have disputes, that the early church didn't argue about things, that everybody agreed on everything. Yes. No, they fought about which books were in and which books were out.
There were some that everyone pretty much agreed on. Like, I've never seen anything talking about people who were like, Luke was definitely not in the Bible.
Yeah,
Like,
even Marcion accepted Luke. At least the non-Jewy parts.
Yes, this was one that it was highly disputed centuries after the first century.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a wild book.
Yes.
I know Bishop Earl loves it, but it's a wild
Eusebius.
Who did the church history.
book. Yeah, the church historian, not the evil Arian Eusebius.
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't even include it in his books in the Bible because he considered it of questionable canonicity.
Well, especially if he's trying to put down something definitive, and in his time it's still questionable, that makes total sense.
Yes. Saint Cyril of Jerusalem. I had it listed as Gregory the Theologian, but I'm assuming we call him something else. It was under an Eastern Orthodox site that I was looking up. I'm like, oh, which Saint Gregory is that?
I think that's Gregory Nazianzus.
Probably. John of the Golden Tongue, who I can't say in Latin.
Chrysostom.
Yes.
Greek.
Greek, yes. All didn't include it in their Bible book list.
Sure.
So these were like pillars of theology, and they're like, I'm not 100% on it.
Well, I respect them for being not 100%. It's the same way that sometimes Protestants will quote, St. Jerome says this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This was St. Jerome's opinion. St. Jerome is allowed to have opinions. He is a doctor of the church, but St. Jerome does not have a infallible magisterium in his own person.
Also,
he did have that opinion, and he mentioned that opinion to the Vatican. And when the Vatican heard it, they said, "Yeah, we don't agree with you." And he said,
"Yes, sir.
Okay,
boss. You're the boss."
Like, part of the reason I think St. Jerome was trying to cut out books of the Bible because he's like, I have to translate this all. Okay, what if we just get like the main ones? Like, we have too many Maccabees. Can we just cut it down?
I am never going to finish this. Don't the Orthodox have like 4 Maccabees?
Yeah. If I was with it for Christmas time, I would have done like 3rd or 4th Maccabees in the book, not in the Bible, with the asterisk of, stuff from the East.
Hey,
because, it's a Hanukkah story.
Hey, that's a great thing about Christmas. Comes around every year.
Yes.
We'll film that in the summer for next Christmas. It'll be great.
But anyway, I heard the comment. I wanted to comment to them personally. I'm like, this person will never believe me. So I'm like, I'm going to research this because...
So brother, possibly sister, but I presume brother, it is not a fact, at least not demonstrable through research, that there was a consensus by the end of the 1st century on the 4 Gospels, the 13 epistles of Paul, 1 Peter, 1 John, and Revelation.
Actually,
there just wasn't.
Actually, I'm going to argue it's actually demonstrably proven that there wasn't, because
at least on all of them together.
Because if there had been that kind of consensus, I feel as though there would have been a lot less need for a council to determine which books would officially be canon.
Yes, when I was looking through this, pretty much all councils that you've ever heard of, like there might have been a little local council or something. Yeah. Agreed. Revelation belongs there. Like we agree. It's weird. We're not exactly sure which John wrote it,
but it's still awesome.
but it still fits.
But again, there's some controversy about Hebrews, mostly due to its uncertain authorship, but ultimately it's accepted as this is legitimate scripture, even though it is an anonymous work.
Yes, I just wanted to point out the fact
that Revelation is not an anonymous work.
Like, we're not saying it doesn't belong in the Bible. It totally does. However,
totally does.
In the 1st century, in the 2nd century, in the 3rd century, we might have been on different sides.
Well, again, it is not true, as some like to assert, that there was an established Jewish canon at the time of Christ. There were various sects of Judaism, each of which had their own canon, so there was not one single unified canon. So it's not that unusual idea that the early Christians, arising out of Judaism, wouldn't necessarily agree right away that there has to be a single set canon. It took a while for, first of all, the books to be written.
Yes.
Since a lot of time they were being lived. There was already a church in Corinth before Paul could write to it. There was already a church in Rome before Paul could write to it. So it took a while for these things first to get written, then to get circulated, then to get approved. It takes time.
Yes.
Fact.
All right. So go down below and comment with the baddest hot take you've heard about Bible and tradition recently.
Come on, we love it. Give it.
Or make one up.
Maybe you'd like to yell at us for suggesting that Martin Luther might have been right and that there were saints who also thought this book did not belong in the Bible. Because I find it interesting. I found a couple Protestant sources that very much I could see where this person got this belief from, that never once mentioned that this was on the list of books that Luther wanted to get rid of. Where that's one of those ones where like, I can understand why Luther wanted to get rid of that.
I totally understand why Luther wanted to get rid of James. Absolutely.
This book is weird. It's really hard to understand because I'm not a first century Jew who understands all the symbolism that they would use.
And going to our earlier discussions of the Rapture, and Revelation is an easily misunderstood book. I've had the honor to facilitate a couple of Bible studies.
It's a frequently misunderstood
Yeah,
book.
it's a mostly misunderstood book. And there's a great demand for people. They want to know more about Revelation because there is, in the popular culture, so many profound misunderstandings of it.
I mean, some of them books are really easy to understand. Acts, Paul went here, Peter went there, then he went there, then there was 5 shipwrecks, then they went there.
And again,
Psalms,
reminder.
well, it's at least poetic, and even if they don't mean it literally,
Reminder, Paul's alive at the end of Acts.
Yes. So it did not get written down in the year 95 or 96.
Pointing to an early authorship, just saying. Yeah, whereas, a lot of Ezekiel...
So many wheels and eyes.
So many wheels and so many eyes. There's so much water and so much measuring. There's a lot of stuff in Ezekiel.
Revelation also has a lot of measuring.
So much measuring. Again, it's a lot like Ezekiel. Yeah. So there are many genres in Scripture. It's not all the same. It's all equally true, but there are different shades of truth. Poetic truth versus literal history. So, all those things, like this episode, and until next time...
Remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
Share that love. Back.